welcome to Module 3, which is all about the law. So there are a few different bits of law that apply to equality, diversity, inclusion and equity. And that's very specifically kind of starts with the Equality Act, which is protection against discrimination for people who possess one or more of the 9 protected characteristics. So we all have at least one of them: their age, disability, gender reassignment, marriage and civil partnership, pregnancy and maternity, race, religion or belief, sex, which is the word used instead of gender in this act, and sexual orientation. And to discriminate against any of these characteristics is a breach of the law. Then we have the Human Rights Act. So this legislation outlines the basic human rights and principles of equality. And there's this acronym of FRIDA, which is kind of reminds you what's covered in the act. So fairness, respect, equality, dignity, and autonomy. We then have the Mental Capacity Act. So that is the kind of act that supports people who perhaps lack capacity to make decisions because of a mind condition, such as dementia, a brain injury, perhaps a long-term health condition or mental health or something similar. And then finally, the CARE Act, which is that piece of legislation that provides 6 key principles which should underpin all work with vulnerable adults. And this includes adults receiving support to make sure it's personal to them, chosen by them, and that they have consent to offer that care and support. But the key act that we're going to look at is this Equality Act, because this is the act that really tells us a lot about kind of how we should behave or what we should expect in terms of services and service delivery. So there are 9 protected characteristics, as I said before. So we have age, disability, gender reassignment, marriage and civil partnership, pregnancy and maternity, race, religion or belief, sex, which is replacing the word gender in this case, and sexual orientation. So here's an exercise for you now. In your workbook, you'll find a series of statements about the Equality Act. So identify which ones you think are true and which ones you think are false. And the answers are in the back of your workbook to have a look at when you've finished. Pause the video now, do the task, and when you're ready, come back for the next part of the module. Okay, so hopefully that was an easy-ish exercise to do, or maybe perhaps you've learned a lot in terms of the Equality Act. So when we think about the Equality Act, you are protected from discrimination when you're in a workplace, when you use public services like health or social care. For example, when you visit your doctor or local hospital, or you're in a care home or supported living, in education, when you use a business and an organisation that provides a service or goods, when you use transport, when you join a club or association, or when you have contact with public bodies like your local council or government departments. So when you are in your roles, the people that you're seeing will all be protected under the Equality Act from discrimination. In the Equality Act, it does provide for something called positive discrimination. So it enables organisations to positively discriminate if they've evidence that those who share a protected characteristic are disadvantaged. An easy way to demonstrate this positive discrimination is in this example. So let's say that there is an organisation senior leadership team that only has 1 female and 8 males. And there's monitoring data that highlights that the organisation has got 60% males and 40% males across the rest of the organisation at non-leadership level. Yet one senior manager only represents 12.5% of the leadership team. So under the Equality Act's kind of positive discrimination legislation, the organisation can undertake activities such as offering females mentoring by the female director, being offered projects to work on within the senior leadership team, and sitting in those non-confidential leadership meetings, and even things like prioritising leadership training to female participants. So if we apply this to a social care or health setting, it might be that perhaps if an organisation doesn't have a lot of people from a particular age group, they might start targeting that age group to try and encourage more people from that age group to attend the service or to get involved. And that might include things like using different kinds of media that demonstrates images of that age group, so that age group know that the service is for them. It might mean that they close their referrals down to everybody else but that age group, so they can prioritize the age group, and they can do that under this positive discrimination legislation. Public sector equality duty then. So the public sector equality duty is something that's set out in the Equality Act, and it means public bodies should be proactive in eliminating unlawful discrimination. They must consider equality issues in everything they do, and that includes meaning that they have to do equality impact assessments when they make any changes or set up new services. They have a duty to consider the diverse needs of the individuals of the population that they serve, and they must minimise disadvantage and ensure inclusion of underrepresented groups. If an organisation is doing something on their behalf, then they must also make sure that that organisation is complying with that duty. And service providers must comply with equality law, and the commissioning authority must ensure that providers are able to meet the requirements of that law. And that includes organisations like Healthwatch Camden. So there is a real duty on Healthwatch Camden to meet this kind of similar measures in the public sector equality duty. So under the Act, there are 4 types of discrimination: direct discrimination, indirect discrimination, harassment, and victimisation. So we're going to have a little look at the discrimination element of this now. I'm going to play you a video, and this video kind of gives you an introduction to the Equality Act, but it also talks about discrimination and the different types of discrimination and how that impacts.
Everyone in Britain is protected from discrimination, harassment and victimisation under the Equality Act 2010. We all have at least one of the following protected characteristics under the Act: age, disability, gender reassignment, marriage and civil partnership, pregnancy and maternity, race, religion or belief, sex, sexual orientation. The Act protects you from discrimination, harassment and victimisation in different places, such as at work, school, housing and other premises, when using transport, or services like restaurants or hospitals. You are also protected in clubs or associations, or when you are involved with public bodies, such as your local council or government departments. Let's explore some examples. Direct discrimination means treating one person worse than another because of a protected characteristic. For example, if you are refused access to a public service, such as a nightclub, because you are disabled. Indirect discrimination happens when a practice, policy or rule applies to everyone, but it has a worse effect on people who share a protected characteristic. For example, if a school had a rule against Afro hairstyles, this could be indirect discrimination because of race. The Act also protects you from harassment. Harassment, including sexual harassment, occurs when unwanted behaviour related to a protected characteristic violates your dignity or creates an intimidating, degrading, hostile, offensive or humiliating environment for you. However, it doesn't necessarily need to relate to your own protected characteristic. For example, you could be harassed because of jokes about gender reassignment, even though you are not transgender yourself. If you are making a complaint of discrimination or supporting someone who is, then you are also protected from victimisation. This means that people cannot treat you unfairly. For example, if you were dismissed from your job because you made a complaint about sexual harassment at work, this would be victimisation. If you are disabled, you have more rights, such as the right to reasonable adjustments. You can find out more about this and other important sections of the Equality Act through our website or our other videos. If If you are worried that your rights have been breached, contact a solicitor or the Equality Advisory and Support Service for advice.
Okay, so hopefully that's given you a good overview of the Equality Act, particularly around discrimination. But we're going to dive in a little bit more in terms of discrimination and harassment in Module 4.